Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be painting this beautiful maple leaf with a cat's tongue brush. But first, I'm going to give you a little tour of the fall color that we're having here in Bucks County. So I hope you enjoy. All right, so here are the leaves that I collected on my walk around the lake. And I tried to get a variety of colors. Um, this one with the yellow and red are my favorite that I just set down. Got some oak leaves, and there was one tree that was dark purple and one with green and red. And so I will probably end up putting these all together in a wreath, but I love getting a variety of colors. Today, though, we're just going to paint this yellow and red maple leaf. And I think I only ended up using like five colors max, basically three colors and a cat's tongue brush, which I think is the weirdest looking brush, but it really makes these beautiful points for the maple leaf or for flowers. And so I picked up this new brush at Dick Blick and I thought this would be really good. I specifically picked it up for maple leaf leaves. And I played around with a little bit, and I'm really happy with the sharp point that you get. It far surpassed using a round brush for me. And when you do this, you're going to want to work pretty quickly. So I started out with just a cad yellow light, a watery mixture, and my paper is not wet. This is wet on dry, and it's on Blick 100% cotton cold press. And I'm holding the leaf in my hand and following. I did not sketch it first. If you're not comfortable with um, just going straight into the paper, by all means, you can take your leaf and sketch it lightly in pencil, or you can even lay the leaf down flat and sketch around it and then fill it in. That's a real easy way with these leaves. If you get them on the first day when they're not curly and they're not dry, it's real simple to just go around them with a pencil. But I like to work on my hand-eye coordination and not necessarily sketching everything. And so I'm just going straight in, looking back and forth between my leaf and the paper. Also, what's nice with leaves is it's not like a portrait. You have a lot of wiggle room and a lot of leeway when you're painting leaves to make it your own. You do not have to, it doesn't have to be exact. You're using the leaf as like a light template, but if you want to make it different colors, you can. And if, how often are you sitting around looking at the actual leaf and the painting? You're generally not. And so this is where your artistic license comes in. Now, it is nice unless you have memorized, the way that a maple leaf is shaped. And I do very much like looking at something um, while I'm getting it down initially on paper. And you can see I put the middle was off. The top of the leaf, the bottom little pointy leaf there is in the wrong spot. So I resolve that as I work my way down the leaf. But I used a real watery mix of cad yellow and I'm keeping it real wet. And I'm coming in now and filling in the middle. Um, because on these leaves, generally I like a lot of the darker color around the perimeter. So you're fine going in with some color. Now I'm fixing that little leaf at the bottom that should go straight down the middle. There should be a little one to the left and a little one to the right. So you can go in, especially in this stage when it's wet, and you can fix your perimeter of your leaf. And so I'm continuing to use the cat's tongue brush. The tip is very pointy and wonderful. And I'm dipping into some Indian yellow. These are my Michael Graham paints. And so I'm going to go around the perimeter with an Indian yellow, which is an orangey yellow. And I love the way the colors ended up on this. So these are all M. Graham paints. And like I said, cad yellow light for the original wash, and then an Indian yellow around the entire perimeter. And this brush, I can't say enough about the point. It's a really wonderful brush for foliage and for just the point that you get on it is really fabulous. So now I'm just kind of pulling it in. It's still wet and it is moving, but sometimes the color doesn't move as much as you want it to. And so kind of pull it in with your wet brush with I dipped and I tapped the water off and went in with a wiped down, not dry brush, but no pigment. And now I'm going back in to finish. And you do have to work a little fast on this. This could be frustrating, I think, for the very beginner, trying to finish this in a methodical manner. But I think if you have a plan and you practice it a few times, you improve with every leaf that you do. I definitely do 2 or 3 practice runs and see what can go wrong. Now I'm going in and just pulling out where the veins are. You can see there are yellow veins on the leaf and then red in between all of that. And so now I switch to a small number 5 round brush, or actually that's even a number 4 round brush, because I felt like the cat's tongue was too big to get in to do these smaller block areas of red. So switching to a round brush and coming in and trying to paint around where that yellow vein goes. And again, it's your leaf, and you could plop colors in, like the leaf in the top right corner of the frame, the picture here, is mostly red with just little rust spots around it. There's really no wrong way to do a fall leaf. It's kind of like a composition where once you get your composition, you're 50% of the way there. It's such an important part of it. Once you get the shape of your leaf there, you have a lot of latitude to plunk in whatever colors you think would look good. And practice, because some of the reds react differently with the yellows. And a lot of times you think, oh, wow, I'm a terrible painter, or this turned out terribly. A lot of it can come down to color combinations that just don't work. So if you can take a few minutes and swatch out some colors and see how they blend together, the reds and the yellows, that'll save you a lot of frustration when you are painting in your painting. And so now I'm coming in and trying to leave some pretty decent sized spaces for the veins, and then bringing this red that's combining. And the red that I'm using is, I've got Cad Red Light mixed with a little bit of permanent alizarin crimson. And when I want to darken it past that, I bring in some transparent red iron oxide, which is a brownish red. But right now I start with the Cad Red Light mixed with some alizarin crimson. And I'm not trying to be too particular. I'm just trying to leave those veins there, but you can see it's very, the veins are kind of wobbly in some areas. And so you don't want it to be what there was a line I've heard, there are no perfect lines in nature, no straight lines in nature. Now, that vein looks pretty straight, but there is a little bit of curvature to it and it kind of moves around a little bit. So don't beat yourself up trying to get these colors in and the vein lines, and you want a little bit of wonkiness. And now I'm coming around and dropping in the red so that it blends with the yellow. The paper is still very wet. You can see it glistening. And so I'm working my way around and want to get the first set of color in there. Now, there are a couple of ways with these leaves that you can do it. You have about 15 minutes working time, and it does start to dry. If it dries too much and you start putting your color in with too much water on your brush, you're going to get weird blooms. So that's why I'm really making an effort to get my first layer of red in here before it gets too dry. And if you see, there's a little tiny bit of green at the bottom of the leaf and where the stem comes out. So I'm plunking in a little dot of sap green, and I am using more pigment and less water so it doesn't really shoot into the rest of the leaf. When you are painting wet into wet, if you go in with a super wet brush, it's going to go everywhere. So you want it more like that was a really wet brush dropping that in there. It's still wet enough for me to do that. But as it gets a little closer to being dry, that can create some problems for you. So hence the reason I said to try to work a little faster on this. So I'm going around the edge with some red. And as you can see, it is drying a lot lighter than when I originally put that color in. I probably would have added a little more pigment. I'm going to try it again tomorrow using more pigment instead of going in with this second pass like I'm going to do, putting in more color. And now I'm going to use the other side of my brush and lightly scratch in the veins. You don't want to do it too hard and rip your paper, but it's a good time now to lightly trace in some vein marks. The back of a brush works so nicely because it's rounded and not real sharp, so tread lightly when you do it. Just push it enough so that it makes a little indent, and you'll see that color rush into there. And then you can go over it with more yellow paint, which is what I'm going to do, and have it really fill in that center vein and the rest of them. Or you could leave it like that. I just love these maple leaves. And I mean, I'm happy with it here, but it seemed to have lost a little bit too much chroma. I'm going to come in and make those little veins. We're still using our tiny round brush. In fact, we're done with the cat's tongue for now, and it's still pretty workable. So I'm going to go up the middle with, there's a little bit of green. You can see on the leaf there are some little green spots. So I want to get those in. So you can hear the airplanes outside. We're near a tiny airport where they land these little planes. So now I'm going in because it's still wet enough to keep going. Now, you are going to run into a little more trouble if you use paper that is not 100% cotton with your drying time, and you will be more frustrated with this. So I recommend when you're doing something like this and you want a long working time, use 100% cotton paper. You will have a much better experience when you're painting. And so some more alizarin mixed with cad red. Now I'm leaning more towards alizarin with less cad red, and I'm using more pigment and less water. And mixing, mixing, mixing. That was even a little too much water. Wanted it a little less. And around the bottom. And you can wait and let it dry and go in again over it and make it more vibrant. Um, I was really happy with this at the end. Fall, I think fall leaves are challenging to paint. There's a certain looseness and beautiful abstract mixing of colors here, but you can overdo it. I think the less colors that you use, the better. If you throw too many colors in there, it gets a little wonky. And yeah, it's my favorite season. But to me, like a fall landscape is one of the hardest things to paint, where I'm painting a whole scene of fall leaves. Individual leaves are a little bit easier for me, but to paint a beautiful fall landscape is very difficult. I'm going to attempt to do one of those next week. We have 80-degree days right now, which is very odd, and so it's been beautiful leaf peeping weather, and I've gone out and gotten a lot of really wonderful reference photos. Now I put way too much water there, and I'm hoping that I don't get a bloom. It should have been a little less, but at this point, I'm just adding more water overall and throwing some pigment in and praying that I don't get a terrible bloom there. Um, Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It did work today. This ended up being, I was happy with this leaf when I was done. And now I'm dropping in some more red and feeling it. It still is cool to the touch. So if it feels cool to the touch, there's still some water left in there and some wiggle room. That means it's still not completely dry, but the paint behaves differently as it's drying. So to me, oil painting is much easier. Watercolor painting can be extremely difficult. Now I'm dropping some yellow down the vein so that it runs out. And I'm looking at it thinking, wow, the red is really fading quite a bit. So I'm going to come back in since it's still not completely dry and add a little more color. But isn't it amazing how, look how faded the area is above where I just dropped that red paint. It's amazing to me how much lighter watercolors dry. And I guess if you have also painted with gouache, gouache dries darker than what you lay down. And oil paints, some colors sink and dry funny, but the color seems to remain intact. So it's just fascinating to me, the different mediums and the rules or the different techniques that you have to use with different colors is amazing. Now I'm dropping in, because it's still wet enough, we're dropping in a little more red. And trying not to totally get rid of that yellow. And it's still moving a little bit. And now, if you look at the leaf, there are little darker dots of red. And in the big areas that are really pale, I'm putting a bunch of red, but then just dropping little dark dots in the orange areas. And a little more red. That's a little bit washed out from the light that's there, but you can still pretty much see true to color what that is. I have a ring light that I use when I paint, and sometimes it's at the wrong angle, so I'm sorry if that's interfering with the leaf where you can see it there. And now I'm coming in with another dark swath of red, and the corners, you can look at the leaf there and see that they're a little darker in all the corners. So it's a good idea to take those little C-cup corners that are where the leaves turn and put paint, more pigment and less water in there. It gives it a more authentic look. And now I'm using the leaf for a little bit of guidance, but now I'm looking around and seeing where I think maybe a little color would look good. So at this point, when you've come this far, I would take a look and use your own judgment on where to drop a little bit more color. You know, the leaf is meant to be, it's a loose guide. It's not a map. They say, I've heard the saying, if you wanted a map, you would use a photograph. When you're painting, it's good to be painterly and use your artistic license to change it up a little bit. I mean, you kind of want it to look like a painting and not a photograph. it's just going back and forth with this. I'm loving these M. Graham paints. I have been very happy with. I've kind of been trying out all different paints. I ordered some Myling paints and some of these. I bought them M. Graham, and then I bought some new Winsor and Newton. So I've been bopping around trying all different watercolors, and these M. Graham have honey in them, and they are luxurious. I will put the link to the colors that I used in the comments. And now I'm coming up with red, a little bit of red for the stem, because it's kind of got some red, and you see it looks like the red part of the leaf. And now I see a lot of people that fill in a shadow, and I like to ground what I'm painting. So I'm gonna mix up some what is it, Davies gray, a bluish gray, and I'm gonna really water it down to put in a few. I set it over, and I can see from my angle, you can't see it from your angle so much, but the shadow, I wanted to add a shadow around one side of this. And so be very careful if you do this to not touch. I'm taking great care to not touch the paint of the leaf, because it will all just blend together. And I'm doing a very light, watery first pass, and then I go in closer to the leaf with a little bit more pigment, very little water. And like I said, from my angle, you can't see my angle from here, but I think that the shadow adds a nice touch. So I'm going to fill in the rest and just say thank you if you've stuck with me this long. We've had a lot of medical stuff going on here, 2 surgeries in our house, and so I've not been on YouTube as much as I'd like to be. But if you're here and you're hanging with me, thank you so much, and I hope to get back to my regular schedule next week, doing 2 to 3 videos a week. And I'm just starting to do some real fun videos for Christmas. So if you are new and you haven't subscribed, if you subscribe, then you will get a notification of my new YouTubes. And if you paint along with me, we'd love to have you join our little group over on Facebook, Creating with Christine Marks, where we share the work that we make, and just a very small, nice little group of painters over there. So now I'm adding the little stem to the left, and that is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm just going to be quiet until this is done, and you have a wonderful day.